Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Now in today's video, we're going to be abbreviating numbers inside of Roblox Studio. So let's get into it. So if you don't know what I mean by abbreviating numbers, I basically mean taking a number such as 1000 and turning it from 1000 to 1k. So to start, you're going to want to go over to server-script service, and we're going to want to set up our leaderstat script. Okay, so I've gone ahead and written this. Now, if you don't know how to create a leaderstat script anyway, I'll probably leave or pin a video on how to do it, but it's very simple, and this is basically it. And all it means is that if I join into the game now, you should see in the right corner of my screen, we get this. Yes, see, it says cash. Now, you notice there's nothing there. That's because, unlike normal games, I've set my cash value to be a string value. Usually you would put an int value there, meaning the number would be 0, but we want it to be a string value, because if it's 0 or if it's an int, then we won't be able to put k or b or q, you know, whatever you're putting, the abbreviation on there basically. We won't be able to put letters in that corner. We won't be able to put letters in their money. So this is how we're going to be doing it. But the problem is, as well, we need to keep a recording of the actual cash value without the abbreviation. Because say if they have 1,100 cash, right? Now, if we abbreviate that to 1.1k, if we want to add another 100, it's going to be a lot more difficult to add 100 or 0.1 to the k, because it's going to be a lot more difficult to add when you've got a number there. We're going to have to split the number apart. We're going to have to split the number away from the actual 1.1. So what we want to do is we want to keep the recording of the 1100, yet also have the back end of the abbreviation. So what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to create another one. I'm going to call it cash value. And this is actually going to be our int value, but we're going to put it inside the player instead of the leader stats. Because if we put it inside the leader stats, then it'll show up on the player's, it'll show up where the player has it, or sees it. So if we just do cash value dot name equals cash value. Now, if I join into the game now, you should see inside of my player, you should see that we have the cash inside the leader stats here. Which is a string value, and we also have cash value here, which is what we want. So basically, to start the abbreviation, we're going to first want to get the cash value, right? So we're going to want to detect when the cash value changes, because obviously we're going to want to add a new number or abbreviate the number if the number's been changed. So what we're going to do is do cash value colon, and then you want to do a neat function called get property change signal, and then we want to add in value. This is basically going to make it so that we can detect when the value has changed. Then, as usual, we're going to want to connect to that and run a function through it. Okay, so now that we've got this, we want to define our abbreviations. Now, your abbreviations can be anything. They don't have to be K or M or B or T, and they can go up as much as you want. You can add more, but I'm just going to do the simple ones. So I'm gonna call it like abbrev. It could be anything. It's a variable name, meaning you can change it however you like. But the first one has to be empty, because if it's below 1000, we don't want it to be that to be K on the we don't want it to be 900k if they actually only have 900. So we're going to want to have the empty one as this, meaning it will say 900 and then that's it. But then afterwards, we want it to be K, like that. Then we want it to be M, and then B, and then you can go up as much as you want, but I'm just going to add on T as the last one, because I don't want to make it that extreme, especially just for the video. But you can obviously add more, and you can do Q and etc. I can't remember off the top of my head. But anyway, we're going to want to have a variable of their cash, because we're going to want to make changes to this cash value. We're going to want to make changes to it so that we can make sure that we're keeping record of the 1.1 or the 1100. So what I'm going to do is simply just create a variable, we'll call it val, and define it to the cash value.value. Now, I'm going to make it so that we actually have a count to it, because otherwise we're going to want to keep track of how many times it runs through. Because if we or we divide it by 1,000 once and it still isn't, say if we divide it by 1,000 once, that number is going to be below 9999, right? If it's 1,000, meaning it'll be 1, meaning the count will be 1, and then we can count the abbreviation. It's difficult to understand, I know, but just trust me, it works. So we want to keep the count. We want to have a count to it, and we want to keep it as 1. Now, we're going to want to make sure the number is over 1,000 to start with, because if we run it under 1,000, then it's going to be odd, and it's going to try and minus, going to try and divide it by 1,000, even though that number will then be a minus number. So basically, we want it to be above 1,000 already, because otherwise, like I said, yeah, it would go down, and it wouldn't be alright. So we want to do if val is greater than or equal to 1,000, because we want it to be if it is 1,000. So if the money is exactly 1,000, it will say 1k instead of it being 1,000. Then when you get 1,001, it will say 1.001. But yeah, so if I hit then, and then we want to do a while, because like I said, you're going to want to add up. So on the 1,000, it may be a single one. So on 1,000, it may run once, but then, you know, a million, it may run twice, billion 3 times, and trillion 4 times, and then etc, etc. So we're going to want to make it run more than once. So I'm going to do a neat function called while. I'm saying neat a lot, but yeah. I'm going to want to use while, and then while val is over 999, do. Now basically, a while, you know what a while true loop is, because if you've seen my other videos, especially in Python, I did a video on that. That was my first video on this channel. But that actually goes through how you, what a while true loop is. A while loop is basically saying, while the variable val, while that number is greater than 999, it'll run this, meaning it will go infinitely until this number is less than 999 or whatever you're giving in. So, less than 1,000 is actually. So, yeah, that's what we want to be able to do, because we want it to be able to run multiple times. Now, we're going to want to add 1 to the count to start with, because otherwise there'll be no point, because otherwise it'll just be, it'll be 1,000 m, or it'll be you have a million, but it says you have 1,000. So that's not correct. You want to keep track of what point they're at, whether they're at 1,000, million, billion, or trillion. So with count, we were going to add a val. Well, we want to carry on and change the val to, like I said, the number that we have currently divided by 1,000. And then once we've got that, that's basically it. All we have to do is do cache.value, which is the actual value that you will see, equal to, well, we're going to have to make it a string. We're going to have to we want it to be equal to val, but to be able to concatenate it, which basically means to stick two strings together, we're going to need them to be strings. We can't do one number and a string. It will give you an error if you do that. So we need to turn the val to a string, because currently it's an integer. And actually, let's change it up here. Let's change this to a number value, because we want it to be float, because we want it to be 0.1, 1.1. If they have 1, say they have 1,100, we want it to show 1.1 instead of just showing 1. You can change it to an int value if you want it to stay that way, but we want it to have 0.1 here. And then we're going to want to get the abbreviation on the end. So I'm going to do abbrev, which is the variable name, and a little bit of a voice crack there. And we're going to want to add the count. So basically, if the number is below 1,000, it'll run the first one, meaning there won't be an abbreviation. But if it is greater than that, and only greater than that, so it doesn't go up again, it'll give it 1,000. So basically, if we run this, if we quickly head in here, you'll see that our cache isn't anything because we haven't updated it yet, and the cache value is this, and we want to change our current view to the server because we're recording it from the server. Sorry. And we want to change it to 100, for instance. And if we join in now, then you'll see that our cache is now 100, and there'll be no abbreviation. However, if we change it to 1100, then you should see that when I join in, it will say 1.1k, which is exactly what we want. And that will go up continuously. But obviously, it's a little bit inconvenient being able to, turning it every time through the server. We want to change our view. So I'm going to quickly tell you how to do that, how to make it so that you can actually implement adding cache to the number throughout your game. So I'm going to add a remote event, basically meaning we can fire this remote event from the client to give an update to the server. So the remote event will be called, let's say, update number, or update cache. That makes more sense. And then we can simply create a starter GUI, or we can simply create a GUI. So I'm gonna quickly create one. Obviously, I would not have a button like this in your final game because this will scale wrong. That's for another video, but yeah, if you basically just make it so that we hit click, and then add text, scale it. It's quickly just me creating one. It really doesn't need to be fancy. And then we enter a local script in there, and what we do is we do game.replicatedStorage.update cache fire server, and then we fire it with the amount that we want to put in. So let's say 100 to start with, but we don't want it to be exactly this because currently this will just run it as soon as the game loads. We want it to do script.parent.mouse button one click connects function, and then we want to put this inside, basically saying when the player clicks this button, give them 100 cache. But obviously, if you run this currently, there won't be anything. It will just send the remote event a update. But we want to pick up that update and read it from the server. So in the same script, you can add another script. It doesn't need to be the same script. I'm basically just going to add game.replicatedStorage.update cache.onServerEvent connect function, and then we want to get the player because we want to be able to change the exact player that is updating it, and then we want to give the amount because in this we actually said we wanted 100 coins, so we're gonna give them 100 coins. So we're going to do, or 100 cache, whatever your system is. So basically we want to do player dot, and then we set it as cache value, so player.cache value, because we saved the value inside the player. If you see here, that's the parent, basically, whether you put the parent dot value plus equals, basically meaning we're adding to the number the amount, and that should basically be it. So if I stop trying to publish it and we join into the game, then you should see that we have 0 cache up there. Close that. 0 cache up there, but if I click it, we'll get 100, 200, 300, 400, 500, 600, and then when we finally get to 1,000, we get 1k, 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, and then we can go up and up and up, and it will go infinitely. So if we, just for demonstration purposes, if I increase this to, let's say 100,000, and then we come into the game, you will see that that's a random error. Don't worry about that. If we click this, it will say 100k, 200, 300, 400, and then when we finally get to 1 million, it will say 1M. So the abbreviations work, and we've even programmed a little button for it so that will increase the player's cache. And that's on the server end. The cache being updated is on the server end, basically meaning anybody else in the game will see the abbreviation as well. It's not just you. Anyway, that was it for today, guys. I hope you enjoyed. Hope you learned something new, and I will see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.